He was the best quarterback running and throwing the ball in the entire NFL his rookie season. He wasn't very big and was soft spoken, but was lion-hearted on the field as he set records that stand unto this day. He played during a time of tremendous social unrest, but let his game do most of the talking. No, I'm not talking about modern day phenoms like Pat Mahomes or Russell Wilson, but a man who was the Jackie Robinson of his position that most of you have never heard of. I only ran across this story while living in Los Angeles and working in Long Beach, California, and could not believe the legends he surpassed. Football, not football, reveals who this great man is for the culture. Let's go. I wanna welcome you to hashtag football, not football. And we're definitely we're blessed to have you to speak with you and discuss the trailblazing that you've done for so many that have come behind you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here with us. So first off, I wanted to start off with I read a story about the magic bag. What was in the magic bag, sir?
Oh, just my cousin was a elementary school teacher and coach. He's the one that coached me and Gail Sears and Johnny Rogers. He had all of us when we were kids, and he got pissed off at me because this bully was running me home. So he took a bunch of stuff out of his bag at the elementary school, and football, basketball, baseball, soccer. He brought the whole shebang over to the house, and then he thumped me upside the head. He says he used to call Sad Sack. If he liked it, he used to call Gil Sears Sad Sack. He used to call me Sad Sack, and I was his cousin. And so he thumped me upside the head, and he said, "Look, I'm gonna teach you how to play each one of these sports in this magic bag, in this bag." He didn't call it magic bag, but he said, "I'm gonna teach you how to play each one of these sports, and when I come back from work, he used to work about a block away at the packing house. This is during the summer. So when I come back from work, I don't ever want to hear that you ran away from this bullet." And so I just started playing with all these little sports, starting with baseball and whatever. And that's how I got started. The magic box. I call it the magic box because it transformed my entire life from that day forward. And I found out through, just playing with those toys that I had a penchant for sports, and that I was pretty good at it. And that's how I started, and I call it the magic box.
Okay, that's amazing. That's a amazing way to get you started on that process, that journey. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then that
Yeah.
then that journey took you to the University of Omaha.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask at that point in time. I know race relations was still kind of thick. Did you ever consider attending HBCU,
What's HBCU?
historically black college?
Uh, yeah, I did, but there weren't too many takers. I was a small guy when I came out of high school,
Yeah.
and I searched around. There was some small schools, mostly white oriented. Where I grew up in South Omaha,
Yes, sir.
but obviously they didn't want me to play quarterback. So there was a school in my hometown, Omaha University, where ironically my cousin, the one that gave me the magic box, he went to school there and played football and basketball. And he's an exceptional athlete, but because he was black, he didn't get a chance to, show his skills other than, secondary. His name was Bob Rose. He taught me and Gail Sayers and Johnny Rogers. He taught all of us how to cut. So all of us had this ability to cut, and we owe all of that to Bob Rose.
That's amazing. So you go to the University of Omaha, and you lead them to 3 conference titles. That's
Yeah.
that's an amazing story that you were able to, take that chance and were given that chance. I mean, since your cousin wasn't able to be given that chance, and you're saying that he was this amazing athlete. What?
Yeah, he was. The thing is, these other small schools, they offered me a partial scholarship and all that. Although I excelled in football and basketball, and so they didn't offer me a scholarship to play quarterback, and I told them I wanted to play quarterback. So it took me a little time to make a decision on what school I was going to, but I decided on going to Omaha, and the head coach there, his name's Al Caniglia. He told me, he said, "Listen, you come to Omaha University, and I'll make you a promise. 2 things. One, you get your degree, and the other, you'll play quarterback." And that's all I needed to hear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And do you remember any experiences at University of Omaha that prepared you for the next level to go to the NFL?
Well, not really. What happened was there were a lot of scouts in the NFL because we had quite a program at UNO, and there were scouts that used to come to scout Jerry Allen, Jimmy Jones, Big Peterson, and those guys. So they didn't come to see me. They came to see scout, those guys. And so Stan Jones, who used to play for the Chicago Bears back in the monster, he was one of the monsters of the Midway back in those days, and he would come like often to see those guys perform. So he was there. He would come by and he saw me throwing the football on the sideline, and he'd ask Coach Caniglia, he said, "Well, wait a minute, who's that little guy throwing the football?" And Coach told who I was and whatever. But they didn't come to see me. They came to see these other guys. and he took a lot more interest in me when he came to scout my teammates, and that's how, that's basically how the interest in me became prevalent.
I mean, that's great that you being on a stacked team like that got you the looks. That's an amazing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was reading. You were drafted in the 14th round by the Broncos, a round which doesn't even exist anymore, right? Which
Right. They closed the program down.
So and I've read that you insisted on going to camp as a quarterback. Why'd you make that move?
Well, what happened was, they expressed some interest in me as a defensive back. Because they saw me play basketball, they saw me play football. So, I figured the Denver at the time was looking for defensive backs, and so that was the position that they wanted me to try out for. But I found out that Denver was one of the only teams in the NFL that had their practices in front of the media and the fans. So when they approached me about, playing defensive back, I said I told them I would play defensive back or compete, but you got to give me a 3-day trial of quarterback, or else I'm going back to school. I said all I wanted to do was to showcase my skill, because it was in front of the fans and the media, and they thought I was crazy. I was a 14th round draft choice, trying to dictate where I played and what position I played or whatever. And I just told them that, all I wanted was a 3-day trial. Just 3 days, that's all I wanted. And I thought, 3 days would give me the opportunity to showcase, the skills that I had. I had made All-American in college, and, could have played professional basketball if I wanted to or whatever.
Wow.
And so that's how it happened. They finally, after a while, they finally acquiesced to my so-called demands, that I get an opportunity to showcase my skills in the 3-day trial that they normally had in Denver at the time. Well, in those 3 days, I had a good camp. And after 3 days, they hurried up and put me at defensive back. I was actually Denver's starting cornerback in Denver after the 3-day trial, but they didn't give me an opportunity after the 3-day trial. Well, during those 3 days, the Denver Post started, writing about me, and so, Lou Saban, I don't think he really liked the fact that I was getting some attention. So they hurried up and put me back to defensive back, where actually I was a starter until I got hurt.
Yeah.
But that's how it evolved.
Okay, so you make a legendary start in '68. Before we talk about that, I want to delve into the mood in America at that time. There was the Black Power movement. MLK was assassinated that year. Did any of that weigh on your mind while you were fighting this struggle to do something that other black men haven't done ever? Were you watching that, and did that weigh on you?
All weighed on me. You know, in 1968, 1968 was the most pivotal year of change in the history of this country. And you had John Carlos and you know, giving the Black Power salute. You had Dr. King. You had, you know, all of the things that were happening in this country regarding change, particularly in the area of race. They were all coming our way. So to have that happen in '68 was appropriate. That the color barrier was to be broken in '68 for some reason, you know, 1968 was just a year in which everything changed in this country. You know, Robert Kennedy, you had Bob Gibson, who just recently passed. We grew up together, and you know, he was MVP. It was, you know, Gail Sayers, who I grew up with as well, who also just passed. But we all set records. And so '68 was just, for some reason, presented itself to make changes through athletics particularly, but in, not only in athletics, but it just presented itself as, you know, the era of change for the world, not just black athletes.
Absolutely. So on September 29th, 1968, you entered the game. You were the fourth-string quarterback. You entered the game in the fourth quarter. So that was your first action in the NFL. Does anything stick out in your mind about the first time you got in an NFL game?
Well, I was stuck out there. I was stuck out there, and I didn't have any. See, I didn't go through training camp. Only those 3 days with any experience and a learning curve or anything like that. So I never thought I was going to play. Steve Tensley, the starting quarterback, got hurt, and we were, you know, at that time I was a backup, but I didn't have but a few plays. They made a couple of adjustments for me to, go in the game if I had to, but then I didn't, I wasn't prepared to go in to actually play with a full menu of plays. So we were behind, even though the fact that I had a great camp during those 3 days catapulted me into at least being considered if there was anything happening. Whereas if I had to go in, I'd have, some semblance of a play structure. Absolutely. But I didn't have enough in my repertoire to play a game. Well, all of a sudden, during those 3 days, Steve Tensley got hurt. He he was in the starter at the time. He got hurt, so they used those other quarterbacks that were in that 3-day camp, that I participated in. And so we came into the third game of the year, and I'm sitting there on the bench, and he told me, Briscoe, you going in? And I said to myself, what in the world? What in the world is happening? You put me in the game. I don't have but a smattering of plays or whatever. But I said, oh, hey, all I did was go out there with the attitude that I had all my life. That especially going here and just play college ball, play sideline. Just play, just go out there and run and gun. Because I didn't have enough plays for a cerebral approach to the game at that time. They just threw me out there, and I knew that I didn't. Nobody really thought that. I don't think they thought that I could go out there and just play with what I had. But hey, I went out there and I said, here we go. And I was the only one that wasn't nervous. All my players, they were nervous for me, or whatever. But I just went out there running and gunning. And all I wanted to do is complete my first pass. Because if I completed my first pass, the rest of it was going to be okay. And sure enough, I completed my first pass for a 22-yard gain and went all the way down and scored. Got the ball again, all the way down and scored. And we almost pulled the game out. And that's how it happened. But I just went out and played my sandlot game because that's all I could do. I didn't have that many plays. I was running and throwing. And turned out we almost pulled it out. And the next week, they always thought that, the fans would not back a black quarterback. The next week, the stands were full to come see this kid running and throwing, and so the fans started supporting the team and supported me, and we were off and running.
So I know you've heard this, a bunch of times, but on October 6th, that first start, how'd you feel?
Well, see, I was a quarterback all my life, from Pop Warner all the way to Denver. And I went to a melting pot school. I grew up, with all types of kids, Mexicans, black, white, or whatever. So, I wasn't like a lot of the black quarterbacks that came directly after me, James Harris and Henry Jackson and those guys. They went to a predominantly black school. So I wasn't weaned on being a quarterback in a black college. I quarterback white kids. So I didn't have that apprehension about quarterback or any of those quarterback in a white school. I mean, all black school. I'm sorry. I quarterback white kids. So I had a different upbringing in as a quarterback in a white setting. See, the thing is, back in those days, they thought that white players wouldn't play for you. Well, I was always a quarterback in a white setting, and I always had command of my hurl. And so it was different. Like James Harris and Doug Williams and Henry Jackson and those guys, because they all went to a black school and they quarterback black players. So I didn't have that hurdle to surpass, because I had always been a quarterback in a black, in a white setting.
Absolutely. So do you think that what helped you, propelled you to you still holding the rookie record for 17 TDs in only 5 games for the Denver Broncos?
Yes.
Because there's been some good quarterbacks in Denver that came after you, and they still haven't touched their record, sir.
Well, I don't think Denver's ever had a black quarterback again.
No, I'm not. I mean, I'm just talking about good quarterbacks, right? I'm just saying there's been some good guys that played there, and
well, one thing I'm proud of is the fact that Elway didn't break my record, Tim Tebow didn't break my record. After all these, 50 years ago, the record should be broken at some point in time. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But those are two most established quarterbacks, came in as rookies like I did, but they didn't break my record. And
Absolutely.
not being selfish or anything, but I'm proud to have kept that record all of these years, even though they never let me play again.
Okay. So now I have a question about current football. How do you see it playing out? How much of a fan are you of some of these younger black quarterbacks who are excelling and doing, amazing work in the NFL, when you remember when it was so much harder for a brother to be able to get a snap, and now you see these guys and they're excelling and they're some of the best players in the league now. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel real good. We've got a plethora of black quarterbacks, and they're not called black quarterbacks, they're quarterbacks. And that's all we wanted to be.
Yes, sir.
Quarterback. But, the name black quarterback always came up when we were playing. And the fact is that if these kids that are playing in the league today were playing in '68, they wouldn't be playing quarterback.
Absolutely.
They would put them to another position.
I know what I was reading about.
If I was playing, today with my style of play, then I'd be playing quarterback. Nothing, not bragging or anything. I'm just saying that's just the way it is.
You can brag. It's okay. It's okay. I was reading a story about the quarterback in Baltimore, Lamar Jackson.
Lamar
That
Jackson. They called me on him and asked me should he play a different position. Well, hell, when I was playing, they didn't make Fran Tarkenton play another position or Bob Greasy. As a matter of fact, I beat Bob Greasy one-on-one when I was a quarterback for Denver. We played Miami, and I ended up being his receiver
so
in Miami.
absolutely. So you were traded in '71 to Miami. How great was it to win a Super Bowl?
Oh yeah, that was I just wanted to know if I could have won the Super Bowl. Bob Greasy was my quarterback. I beat Bob Greasy as a quarterback one-on-one, and I often thought about could I have quarterbacked the Dolphins or any team to the Super Bowl, and I often thought that I could.
Did that ever come up in conversation between you and Bob Greasy when you got to the Dolphins that you beat him?
Well, Larry Zonka, because Zonka was on that team I beat and kicked, and Zonka came up to me one day and said, "Well, when Greasy got hurt, and Earl Morrall had to take his place. He said, we didn't worry. You could have taken us." And it surprised me because Zonka doesn't give many compliments. And, he said that he thought that I was good enough to play quarterback because he remembered that I beat him. But he brought that up in conversation, and that was one of the best compliments I ever had.
And that's great that you have these level of ball players coming to you, and complimenting you and telling you how they appreciate you and they know that you can win. And the fact that when you went to Buffalo, you went to the Pro Bowl twice as a wide receiver, and you're a quarterback, but because you weren't given a chance, you still went and you balled out at another position. I don't, there aren't many players that can do that.
Well, my thing is, in my life, growing up in the '60s, you can never give up. And we all knew that you had to be 3 times better than a white player or person in pursuit of the same job. That's just the way we were taught. So you couldn't give up. You can give out, but you couldn't give up. And so I was always taught not to give up. And so that's, that carried on. That was my mantra. And that carried on.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, I got something going on with my phone. But I was always, as we grew up in the '60s, you had to be 3 times better. And you knew it wasn't going to be a level playing field, whatever you do, whether sports, education, whatever. We were always taught that you're not going to get a fair shake, but you can't give up. And so that's how, that's how we grew up. And so when they told me I couldn't play, when they obviously showed me that I wasn't going to get an opportunity to play quarterback, and I had utmost supreme confidence, in my athletic ability. And so, I realized that, I was going to have to, if I was going to play in the NFL, I'd have to play another position. So that's why I went to Buffalo. I went to Buffalo. They had drafted James Harris in the 8th round, even though I threw 4 touchdown passes against Buffalo the previous year. And they still wouldn't let me compete. And they told me when they drafted James Harris, I knew that they weren't going to have 2 black quarterbacks. Not even, I didn't, so they drafted James. And, he was a great addition. And he got screwed over. And I told him a lot of the things that were going to happen to him. I told him, and sure enough, he ended up without a job. But then he got a break with the Rams a couple of years later. So.
And how was that? How was that relationship? That the fact that there weren't many black quarterbacks, but were you guys still a tight unit who communicated and shared your ups and downs to like you said, you helped, you spoke to him so that you would help him overcome those obstacles. Was that a tight, a small?
Well, James came from Grambling, so his whole thing, he was protected by Eddie Robinson. It's all black school. So he didn't have to go through. I didn't go through what he went through because I quarterbacked in an all-white school.
Okay.
And it was a culture shock to James because he didn't have to deal with racism with the team because it was all black.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I quarterbacked in an all-white school, but they didn't treat me like that. I was just one of the guys. Of course, there were other stuff going on around me, but sports kind of bind people together. So you have life has a different slant on it because of sports. Or you look at sports now, basketball, football, baseball, whatever. And over the years after Jackie Robinson, it took a little time, but sports kind of meshed society together, so it's a great common denominator.
Definitely, and through my life, I've definitely taken part of the teams and built many relationships. And I want to ask because you were on what is probably the best NFL team ever, the undefeated Dolphins. What and arguably the one of the best head coaches ever with Don Shula. How
right.
And like you said, Larry Zonka, who you said didn't compliment much, but he did. So I'm assuming that that there was a good relationship there, and when they do, I'm assuming when they discuss it and they bring those guys up, it's always good memories for you.
Well, we had a no nonsense team. We had different guys that hung out together or hung out by yourself. But when we came to the field, we were all business. We were all business, and But we do. Guys like Murphy Morris and Hugh Begin and those guys used to hang out together. Paul Warfield and I would I gained a lot of knowledge from him, but I was, I was kind of like a loner myself. But different guys had, Kick and Zonka, they used to hang out together. So we weren't like a team that, a bunch of guys that hung out together. But when we came to practice, we were ready to go.
And that's
and we, of course, we obviously when we came to the stadium on game day, no other team was more in shape than we were, and they weren't as prepared as we were. It was something to behold.
And that's great. That's a testament to Coach Shula to ensure that his team is the most prepared to win, and hence the reason why he's the only coach in the history of the league to have an undefeated team. And that's amazing. And it's amazing that you were able to be an integral part of that and experience that. And something, you have so many things that so many people have never done before, which is amazing. And I'm so happy that we got to talk to you and hear more about the obstacles you had to go past, the people that you competed against. I'm assuming that you and Gail Sayers were very competitive when you guys played against each other as kids, and that's amazing.
Well, see, the thing is, Shula would set the table, so you'd always be competing against somebody. Nobody had a locked-in job, so being highly competitive at each position, it made you ready and competitive to go into a game. Now, he was a great coach. He was the Belichick of his day.
And what was your relationship like with Coach Saban?
That's funny because people ask me, was he a racist? And was it a racist approach that he had with me? And I thought, and I really couldn't answer the question because he didn't really have to start me. He could have just, he could have got, he was desperate, but he didn't really have to start me. But then, after I had proven myself, then he started acting different, as a coach. So I've been asked, was he racist? But he was quirky as much as a racist. I'm sure that racism had a lot to do with it. Because in 1968, there was no black quarterbacks performing.
Absolutely.
So, when people ask me that question, I'm torn between two answers, if that makes sense.
No, definitely, because you don't, there's nothing clear cut for you to say, hey, he acted this way because of the color of your skin.
Right.
We don't know that because in football we get pushed anyway. So they're supposed to coach us hard, and I coach football, so I coach my guys hard, and there's no way to prove that he felt the way because you're black, or maybe he was just pushing you.
Well, yeah, like I said, he knew that I could play. He had sent his scouts when I was in college. And I beat a couple of the best teams in the nation on my level. So he knew I could play, but he did everything he could not to put me out there previously, because then he would have had a problem if he'd have let me compete for that position from the onset.
Absolutely.
But it took major injury to the starter and filtering through the other quarterbacks that were in that 3-day camp that I was in when they found out that they couldn't do the job. So he had no choice. But after I proved myself, now we got a different story. Why wouldn't he let me compete? After I had proven myself and produced. I mean, I threw 14 touchdown passes in 7 games. How can you not, give me an opportunity? I didn't ask him to give me a job.
And at that point,
all I wanted to do was compete. The next year in '69.
And in '69 you were a DB for them.
No, '69. I went to Buffalo.
You went to Buffalo.
And switched to wide receiver.
Okay.
That was the only way. I was going to go to Canada, and I went up to Canada for one day, and I didn't like Canadian football, and I didn't believe that I should be relegated to the Canadian League after all the things I did in the NFL. I was runner-up for Rookie of the Year. I said, gee. And the guy wouldn't give me a chance. So now...
Absolutely.
So now is saving the races, because the next year, after all I did, they wouldn't give me a shot, a try. So in '68 he was desperate. In '69 he was racist. We do it that way.
So there was another brother, Warren Moon, who had to go to Canada as well.
Yeah, Warren and I and Doug Williams and James Harris, we had a little foundation called the Field Generals, and we had it for about 5 years, and we used to go to all the Super Bowl cities and put on camps for kids. That's where I met Cam Newton when he was 15 years old.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. You made these new quarterbacks.
Huh?
You made these new quarterbacks. That's amazing. That the fact that you guys had the foresight to know that these kids needed that.
Oh yeah.
That now now the young kids, they get to look at TV and see the quarterbacks who look just like them. So what I wanted to talk about is, and in my eyes, you're pretty much, the Jackie Robinson of football. You're the first brother to break that barrier.
Thank you.
And I came to meet you because and I've been a football fan my entire life, and playing football, I coach college football, and I didn't come across you or your story from football. I came across because I worked at the the Boys and Girls Club in Long Beach with Michelle, And
Oh, is that right?
that's how I found out. That's how I met you. So it was like, not through, not through, hey, something that you see on ESPN or anything like that, but how do you feel about being, that guy who, is, set the tone for so many other young brothers?
Well, I'm proud of that. And somebody had to set the pace. Somebody had to be the first to prove that a black man could think, throw, and lead, on that level. And I'm glad God chose me, even though he gave me 1 year. But during that 1 year, I proved what I believe. I proved what white America didn't think was possible. See, because they said the fans wouldn't come to the games. The management would frown upon a black quarterback. The players, you wouldn't play for you. See, I can't. All my white linemen were white from the South. They were from Mississippi, Alabama, where were they? Ohio State or whatever. And it was thought that, white players wouldn't play for a black quarterback. That's why there never was one. And the thing is, like I said, all my linemen in the pros were white linemen from the South. Not only had they not played for a black quarterback, hey, they never played for black people, black player before. They didn't, remember until Sam Cunningham ran all over Barry Bryant's people. They didn't. So, for them to play for me like they did, it allayed all the fears that were out there. Hey, after that game, I almost pulled out against the Patriots. The next game, I mean, man, it was all, they had doubled the fan base, and so that was another, myth that was destroyed. So the next year, James Harris was drafted as a quarterback. If I had have failed, he would have never gotten drafted that high, or as a quarterback. And then after that, there were 3 or 4 other black quarterbacks coming out of, that got drafted. But I think that I was able to set the tone to let them know, hey, a black man can throw that ball. He thinks, and I'm proud of that.
Absolutely. I'm definitely proud of that as well. So now I have one last question I'd like to ask you.
Sure.
What young quarterback do you think reminds you of you?
Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson. Okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
because Russ can think, throw, and lead.
Huh?
Russ can think, throw, and lead.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mr. Briscoe, I want to thank you very much for joining us on #FootballNotFootball. It was amazing to talk to you, to hear your story, to get the insight from things that happened way before I was born and that shaped what I see, what I experience, and all these things. Sir, you're an amazing man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.